The crimson alarms shrieked through the crystalline halls of the Valoran High, command like the death cries of a dying civilization. Ambassador Isabella's pristine white robes were stained with sweat as she watched another colony ship, the Asterisk Serenities. Hope Asterisk explode into brilliant orange flames on the massive holographic display. 3 million souls. Gone. Just like that. Her hands trembled uncontrollably as the casualty counter spun upward like a slot machine from hell. 15 billion dead in the past month alone. How do you even comprehend numbers that large? It's like trying to imagine the distance to the nearest star, your mind just breaks. The Shadow Reapers have taken the Kepler system, General Mia reported, her once commanding voice now cracking like dried leather. Dark circles under her eyes told the story of sleepless nights spent watching worlds burn. Our defense fleets are scattered across 12 sectors like leaves in a hurricane. Isabella, we're not just losing this war, we're being systematically erased from existence. Isabella's heart hammered against her ribcage as she stared at the tactical display. The Shadow Reaper armada moved across Valoran space like a crimson tide, each pulsing red dot representing a bioship filled with creatures that fed on terror itself. These weren't your typical space pirates looking for treasure or territory. No, these monsters were something far worse. They were exterminators, who wiped out entire civilizations for the sheer pleasure of watching species scream their last breath. Ever wonder what pure evil looks like when it has starships? The holographic display zoomed in on a Shadow Reaper vessel, revealing its grotesque organic hull that seemed to breathe and pulse with malevolent life. Rows of razor-sharp teeth lined what could generously be called a mouth, while multiple eyes glowed with predatory hunger. These things didn't just kill, they savored every moment of their victims' terror. Ma'am, Communications Officer Oliver's voice cut through the oppressive silence like a knife. We're receiving distress calls from the Arcturus colonies. The Reapers they're not just destroying the settlements. They're keeping some alive, Isabella. They're keeping them alive to watch the others die first. The room fell silent except for the persistent wail of alarms. Isabella felt bile rise in her throat. This was genocide with a smile, extinction delivered with artistic flair. We have no choice, Isabella whispered, her throat so tight with fear she could barely form the words. Her fingers hovered over the emergency transmission console like a pianist about to play her final piece. Send the distress signal to Earth. The humans seem compassionate in their broadcasts. General Mia's eyes widened with the kind of desperate hope you see in drowning victims. Isabella, are you serious? They've barely achieved interstellar flight? What could a species that just figured out faster than light travel possibly do against the Reapers? It's like asking a child with a slingshot to fight a dragon. But here's the thing about desperate times. They make you grasp at impossible straws. Isabella's mind raced back to the intercepted human transmissions they'd been monitoring. News broadcasts showing humans rushing aid to disaster zones, military forces deployed to protect civilians, something they called humanitarian missions. These young humans seem to have this strange obsession with helping others, even at great cost to themselves. Weird, right? Maybe they'll send medical supplies, evacuation ships, ... Isabella's voice trailed off as her finger hovered over the authorization key. The weight of her entire species' survival pressed down on her shoulders like a collapsing star. Maybe they have some advanced technology we don't know about. It's better than facing extinction alone, Mia. General Mia grabbed Isabella's wrist, her grip desperate. And if they don't respond, if they're too afraid, we'll have revealed our position to every scavenger and opportunist in the sector. We'll be broadcasting our weakness across half the galaxy. Isabella looked into her oldest friend's eyes and saw her own terror reflected back. Two women, carrying the weight of billions of lives, making a decision that would echo through galactic history. The irony wasn't lost on her. Here they were, advanced beings who had mastered interstellar travel for millennia, begging for help from a species that still fought wars with chemical explosives. The message goes out, Isabella declared, her voice gaining strength. Authorization code Isabella 7 Alpha. The transmission array hummed to life, its crystalline components glowing with soft blue energy. Simple. A plea for humanitarian aid. Perhaps a few escort vessels to help evacuate survivors. Maybe some medical supplies if they could spare them. Nothing too demanding, just whatever these young humans could manage, without putting themselves at risk. As the signal raced across space at faster-than-light speeds, Isabella allowed herself a moment of dark humor. You know what's funny, Mia? We're about to find out if the universe's youngest spacefaring species has the courage that we've somehow lost. The holographic display flickered, showing the message disappearing into the cosmic void. Somewhere out there, orbiting a small yellow star, was a blue-green world called Earth, home to creatures called humans, who had only just taken their first baby steps into the galaxy. They expected sympathy from these young humans. Maybe a few supply ships if they were feeling generous. Perhaps some medical aid and kind words about their tragic situation. They had absolutely no idea. They were about to witness the awakening of Earth's war machine, a military force that would make the Shadow Reapers look like annoying insects. That's a story for another moment, isn't it? Because right now, Isabella and General Mia could only wait, hope, and pray that somewhere in the darkness of space, someone was listening. Someone who actually gave a damn about stopping genocide. The war room aboard the UES Vengeance fell dead silent as Admiral James Carter's weathered hands gripped the tactical console, knuckles white with barely contained fury. The holographic display bathed his scarred face in an eerie blue glow, showing the systematic destruction of Valoran space in real time, 36 hours. That's how long it had taken for a simple distress signal to transform Earth's peaceful exploration fleet into the largest military armada in human history. You know that moment when you realize everything has changed forever? This was humanity's. Admiral Captain Lucas Thompson's voice cut through the tension like a plasma blade. The commander of the battleship Thunder stood rigid at attention, but his hands shook with barely controlled rage as he held the intelligence reports. The data confirms our worst fears. The Shadow Reapers aren't just attacking random targets. This is systematic genocide. Entire planets sterilized, billions of civilians executed. They're not even taking prisoners, sir. They're just erasing them. Carter's jaw muscles worked like pistons as he absorbed the horrific footage transmitted. By Valoran refugees. Cities reduced to ash. Children's playgrounds turned to glass. Families vaporized mid-embrace. The images were burned into his retinas like acid, each frame a testament to evil that defied comprehension. Ladies and gentlemen, Carter's voice emerged as a low growl that somehow carried the authority of rolling thunder. We have a situation that demands immediate action. His words hung in the air like a death sentence. An entire species, beings with families, dreams, futures, are being hunted to extinction by monsters who kill for sport. The room's atmosphere grew so thick with tension you could have cut it with a butter knife. Every officer present had seen the classified footage. Every single one of them was thinking the same thing. This could be Earth next. Commander Sofia Martinez from the carrier Retribution raised her hand, her dark eyes blazing with the kind of anger that could melt steel. I understand the moral imperative here, but why are we mobilizing the entire Atlantic and Pacific fleets? The Valorans only asked for medical supplies, and maybe a few escort ships. This response seems... She paused, searching for the right word, disproportionate. Carter's smile emerged slowly, like winter frost spreading across a window. It was the kind of smile that would have made a great white shark nervous. Commander Martinez, let me explain something about human nature that our alien friends are about to discover. He gestured toward the massive holographic display showing over 400 human warships arranged in perfect battle formation. The sight was both beautiful and terrifying. Row upon row of sleek destroyers, massive battleships, and carriers bristling with fighter squadrons. It looked like death itself had learned to fly. When humanity encounters genocide, we don't send charity baskets and get-well cards. We don't form committees or debate the ethics in comfortable offices. His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than any shout. We send everything we have. Captain Henry Adams from the Dreadnought Fury looked like someone had just told him the laws of physics were optional. 412 ships, Admiral. For what started as a humanitarian mission, Sir, that's more firepower than we used to pacify the Mars Rebellion? But here's where things get interesting and a little scary. Carter pulled up classified files that made the room's holographic displays flicker with data so sensitive it practically glowed red. Shadow Reaper, tactical analyses, psychological, profiles, combat recordings from 17 extinct civilizations. The information painted a picture that would give nightmares to nightmares themselves. "This isn't humanitarian anymore, Captain," Carter replied, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "Look at the intelligence data. These Shadow Reapers aren't conquerors looking for new territory to rule. They're not pirates after treasure or resources. Hell, they're not even your typical genocidal maniacs with political motivations." The display shifted, showing grotesque bioships that pulsed like living organs, creatures that fed on terror, beings that kept victims alive, just to hear them scream longer. These things are a plague with starships, Adams, a cosmic cancer that spreads from system to system, consuming everything in its path for no other reason than the pure joy of causing extinction. They don't negotiate. They don't retreat. They don't show mercy. Carter's eyes swept the room, meeting each officer's gaze. They simply erase civilizations from existence and move on to find new victims. Lieutenant Colonel William Park from the Marine Assault Division stepped forward, his voice tight with controlled aggression. "Admiral, what exactly are our rules of engagement? Are we talking about defensive operations to protect Valoran civilians, or ... "Colonel, our rules of engagement are refreshingly simple," Carter interrupted, his smile growing wider and infinitely more dangerous. "Find every Shadow Reaper vessel in that sector and introduce them to the concept of human warfare. No survivors. No prisoners. No mercy." The room erupted in a low murmur of excitement mixed with something that might have been bloodlust. These weren't peacekeeping soldiers anymore. They were the sharp end of humanity's sword. And that sword was about to taste alien blood. Ever wonder what happens when you threaten the only species in the galaxy that invented warfare as an art form? Captain Thompson cleared his throat, his tactical mind already working through the logistics. "Sir, coordinate strike patterns across 400 ships? The complexity alone could take weeks to plan properly." Carter's laugh was like breaking glass. "Captain, you're thinking like a diplomat. We're not planning a coordinated dance recital here. We're planning to introduce these genocidal monsters to the reason why humans spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing each other." The jump coordinates locked into the navigation systems with mechanical precision. 412 human warships, each one a masterpiece of destructive engineering prepared to enter hyperspace. The largest military force humanity had ever assembled was about to cross the galaxy for one simple purpose: to teach the Shadow Reapers why genocide was a very, very bad idea. As the final preparations commenced, Carter allowed himself one last look at the Valoran distress signal still playing on his private monitor. Innocent beings asking for medical supplies and evacuation help. They were about to get something entirely different, something the Shadow Reapers would never see coming, until it was far too late to run. Shadow Reaper apex predator Zekthar floated in the pulsing organic command chamber of his bioship, his 6 crimson eyes gleaming with savage satisfaction as he watched another Valoran settlement burn on the tactical display. The screams of dying civilians echoed through his ship's neural networks like a symphony, feeding his hunger for terror. This was what perfection looked like, the systematic erasure of another pathetic species, too weak to defend itself. 43 civilizations. That's how many his kind had consumed across the galaxy over the past millennium. Each one had followed the exact same predictable pattern. Initial shock. Desperate resistance, pathetic calls for help that nobody answered, gradual retreat. Finally, the most delicious part, complete extinction. While the survivors begged for mercy, that would never come. You know what they say about apex predators, right? They never expect to become prey themselves. Zekthar's serpentine body undulated with pleasure as he reviewed the day's carnage. The Valoran military had been pathetically easy to scatter. Their crystalline ships shattered like glass under his hunting pack's bioweapons. Their commanders wept openly during surrender negotiations, before he had them slowly dissolved in acid. Their civilians ran in circles like frightened animals before his reapers harvested them for sport. Apex Predator, Scout Prime Keslock hissed, with barely contained excitement, his voice carrying that particular thrill that came from detecting new prey. We're picking up unknown energy signatures approaching the outer rim of the system. Zekthar's multiple eyes swiveled toward the sensor displays, his predatory instincts immediately sharpening. New arrivals usually meant one of two things: either desperate reinforcements, trying to save the doomed Valorans, or scavengers hoping to pick through the wreckage after the real hunters finished their work. Valoran reinforcements finally growing a spine. His mandibles clicked with dark amusement. The idea of more victims voluntarily flying into his web was almost too delicious to believe. Negative Apex Predator. Unknown configuration entirely. Energy signatures suggest approximately 80 vessels. Small fleet, probably another young species responding to Valoran distress calls. The Apex Predator's laughter was like breaking bones. Perfect. Another naive civilization, about to learn why the galaxy feared the Shadow Reapers. Send Hunting Pack 12 to intercept. We'll feast on their terror before they even realize they're already dead. Case? But here's where things got interesting and terrifying. When Hunting Pack 12 reached the system's edge, Scout Prime Keslock's voice cracked with something Zekthar had never heard before in thousands of years of conquest. Pure, undiluted terror. Apex Predator. Our sensor readings were catastrophically wrong. Zekthar's 6 eyes narrowed to slits. In all his centuries of warfare, his scouts had never made miscalculations of this magnitude. Define wrong, Scout Prime? Did you miscount? They're escort vessels? There aren't 80 ships. Apex Predator. Keslock's voice dropped to a horrified whisper that made the bioships knurl. Networks quiver with uncharacteristic fear. Our sensors were reading energy signatures clustered in tight formations. We thought we were seeing individual vessels, but ... But what? Zekthar's voice carried the edge of violence that had made entire star systems surrender without firing. A shot. There are 412 vessels. Apex Predator. And they're not running. They're not evacuating. Not even trying to negotiate. The scout's voice broke completely. They're advancing in perfect battle formation like they own the entire galaxy. Ever seen an Apex Predator realize it might be outgunned? It's not pretty. The tactical display flickered to life, showing the human fleet emerging from hyperspace like a force of nature made manifest. These weren't the desperate evacuation ships or scattered reinforcements Zekthar had expected. No fleeing transports packed with terrified civilians. No improvised defensive formations trying to buy time for retreat. Just endless rows of sleek, scarred warships arranged in formations so precise they looked like death itself had learned military tactics. Each vessel bore the scars of previous conflicts, their hulls marked with battle damage that spoke of enemies who had learned the hard way not to underestimate these newcomers. What? What are those markings on their hulls? Keslock whispered. Zooming in on the lead vessels, Zekthar's blood turned to ice as he recognized the symbols. Kill marks. Dozens of them on each ship. These weren't exploration vessels or merchant marine converted for defense. These were warships. Purpose-built, battle-tested, apparently very experienced at ending other beings' existence. For the first time in millennia, Zekthar experienced something his species had nearly forgotten existed. Fear. It's not the delicious terror they fed on from their victims, but the cold. Primal fear of a predator suddenly realizing it might have found something higher on the food chain. Open communications immediately, he commanded, trying desperately to mask the panic creeping into his voice. Let's see what these ... primitives want. The communication screen flickered to life, revealing the scarred, weathered face of Admiral James Carter. This wasn't the face of someone seeking negotiation or mercy. This was the face of someone who had seen war, lived through it, and emerged harder than the metal of his ships. Carter's words would be recorded in galactic history, played back whenever. Young species needed to understand what human fury sounded like. This is Admiral James Carter of the United Earth Forces. You have exactly 60 seconds to begin withdrawing from Valoran space, or we will classify you as hostile combatants and respond accordingly." Zekthar's laugh emerged as grinding metal, but even he could hear his confidence cracking like ice under pressure. "You dare threaten us, primitive apes? We are the Shadow Reapers. We have devoured civilizations since before your pathetic sun was even ignited." Carter checked his chronometer with the kind of chilling calm that made veteran soldiers nervous. 30 seconds. "We will drink your blood and gnaw your bones while you're young. Watch," Zekthar roared, desperation making his voice shrill. 10 seconds. Carter's expression never changed. Not a flicker of fear, doubt, or hesitation. Just cold, professional certainty. Time's up. Carter's smile was colder than the vacuum of space. "All ships, weapons free. Show these genocidal monsters why humanity doesn't negotiate with extinction." The space around the Kepler system erupted into what would later be known as the largest naval engagement in recorded galactic history. 412 human warships opened fire simultaneously. Then the Shadow Reapers were about to learn a very painful lesson. They weren't the apex predators anymore. They were about to become extinct. The void around the Valoran system transformed into a hellscape of fire and twisted metal as 412 human warships unleashed the fury that had been building in Earth's military for decades. This wasn't just a battle. This was humanity's formal introduction to galactic warfare, and the lesson was being delivered with the subtlety of a sledgehammer to the skull. The Shadow Reapers had spent millennia terrorizing fleeing civilians and overwhelming outgunned defenders. They were used to easy prey that scattered like frightened sheep. What they got instead was a coordinated war machine that had spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing other humans, and humans, it turned out, were the galaxy's most creatively violent species. All kinetic weapons, continuous. Fire. Admiral Carter's voice cut through the chaos like a blade through silk. The command echoed across 400 ships simultaneously, and the response was immediate and devastating. Rayogan rounds screamed through space at hypersonic speeds, tearing through Shadow Reaper bioships. Like tissue paper in a hurricane. You know that feeling when you bite into what you think is a marshmallow and discover it's actually a rock? Exactly what the Shadow Reapers were experiencing right now. Captain Thompson watched his tactical display with the kind of savage satisfaction usually reserved for watching your favorite team score the winning touchdown. "Admiral, their organic armor is completely useless against kinetic projectiles. These bioships are designed to absorb and deflect energy weapons, but our physical rounds are punching through them like they're made of wet cardboard."
Ow.
The irony was beautiful in its simplicity. Shadow Reapers had evolved their technology to counter the energy-based weapons favored by most galactic civilizations. They were essentially immune to plasma cannons and laser batteries, but humans, still believed in the ancient art of throwing rocks really, really fast. And when those rocks were tungsten core penetrators moving at 3% the speed of light, armor became more of a suggestion than a defense. Commander Sofia Martinez launched her fighter squadrons with the precision of a master conductor directing a symphony of destruction. "Remember your training, people. These aren't human opponents who might hesitate or show mercy. Take every shot that presents itself. No survivors, no prisoners, no second chances." The Reaper bioships writhed and twisted as human weapons tore into their living holes. Acidic biofluid leaked into space like alien blood, while their organic weapons systems spasmed and died under the relentless kinetic bombardment. It was like watching a pack of wolves suddenly realize they'd tried to hunt a grizzly bear. But here's where things got really interesting and terrifying for the Shadow Reapers. Apex predator Zekthar watched his hunting fleets being systematically annihilated with the growing horror of someone discovering their house was built on quicksand. How are they coordinating with such mathematical precision? Our psychic jammers should be disrupting any hive mind communication. They should be flying blind and confused. Scout Prime Keslock's voice shook with pure terror as he analyzed the human formations. They're not using psychic networks. Apex predator. They're using primitive electromagnetic signals, radio waves, and quantum entanglement, but with computational precision we've never encountered in our 1,000 years of conquest. The tactical display showed something that made Zekthar 6 eyes widen in disbelief. Every human ship knew exactly where every other human ship would be at every moment. Their formations flowed like liquid mercury, adapting and reshaping with mechanical perfection. When one ship moved to engage a target, 3 others automatically adjusted their positions to cover potential escape routes. It's like they're all connected to some massive calculating machine, Keslock whispered. Every ship is a finger on the same hand, apex predator. We're not fighting for 100 individual vessels. We're fighting one enormous predator with 400 mouths. Ever wondered what military doctrine looks like when it's been perfected through centuries of humans fighting other humans? Shadow Reapers were getting a front-row demonstration. On the human side, the battle was proceeding with the clinical efficiency of a surgical operation. But it was Ambassador Isabella's panicked transmission that truly shocked every species monitoring the engagement. Human Admiral, our sensors show you're taking casualties. Ships are being damaged. Please, we never asked you to sacrifice your people for us. Carter's reply was broadcast on all frequencies, his voice carrying the cold fury of an awakened giant that had finally found something worth destroying. Ambassador E, you didn't ask us to sacrifice anything for you. In the background, a massive Shadow Reaper mothership, a bio-vessel the size of a small moon, exploded in a brilliant cascade of fire and organic debris. You asked for help. This is how humans help. The words hit the galactic community like a shockwave. Other species sent aid packages and medical supplies. Humans sent overwhelming military force with a simple message. Genocide stops here, and it stops now. Captain Henry Adams from the Dreadnought Fury reported, with barely contained excitement, Admiral. The enemy is beginning to break formation. Multiple bioships are attempting to retreat. But Carter wasn't finished, not by a long shot. His smile was the kind that would have made a shark request backup. All ships pursuit course. Launch all fighters. Deploy hunter-killer squadrons. We're not stopping until every last one of these genocidal parasites is either dead or running so fast they forget this galaxy exists. The surviving Shadow Reaper forces began their retreat in absolute panic, but they quickly discovered something terrifying about human military doctrine. When humans decide you're the enemy, geography becomes irrelevant. The human fleet split into hunting packs, each group tasked with tracking down fleeing bioships across multiple star systems. Lieutenant Colonel William Park's Marine assault teams were already preparing boarding operations. Sir, what are our orders regarding any Shadow Reapers we capture alive? Carter's response was broadcast across the fleet, and it would become the foundation of humanity's reputation throughout the galaxy. Colonel, the Shadow Reapers made a simple mistake. They thought extinction was a game they could play without consequences. His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than any shout. They're about to learn that humans wrote the rulebook on extinction. We're much, much better at it than they are. The galaxy's former apex predators were about to discover what it felt like to be hunted by a species. It had turned warfare into an art form, and humans had just unveiled their masterpiece. 8 months later, Ambassador Isabella stood in the gleaming, rebuilt Valoran Council chambers, her crystalline form now radiating confidence instead of the desperate fear that had consumed her during those dark days. The hall around her buzzed with activity that would have been absolutely impossible before humanity's dramatic entrance onto the galactic stage. Representatives from 29 different species filled the massive chamber, not as desperate refugees begging for scraps, but as proud founding members of what humans had simply and effectively named the Alliance. The transformation was nothing short of miraculous. Where once stood a galaxy ruled by fear and the constant threat of extinction, now existed something unprecedented in galactic history, a unified defense force that actually gave a damn about protecting the innocent. When we sent that distress signal 8 months ago, Isabella began, her voice now resonating with wonder and gratitude rather than the bone-deep despair that had nearly consumed her. We expected charity. Maybe some medical supplies, if we were lucky. Perhaps a few escort ships to help evacuate our children before the Shadow Reapers finished their genocide. She paused, letting her words sink in, as she gestured toward the massive viewing ports showing the bustling space lanes outside. Instead, we received justice delivered with such overwhelming force that it reshaped the entire galactic order in less than a week. You know that feeling when you ask for a Band-Aid and someone shows up with a full trauma surgical team? That's basically what happened to the galaxy. Admiral James Carter, now bearing the distinguished rank of Alliance Supreme Commander, stood near the tactical displays, reviewing after-action reports that read like something from humanity's ancient mythology. The Shadow Reapers hadn't just been defeated in battle. They had been systematically hunted across 7 star systems like cosmic vermin until their entire 1,000-year-old civilization simply collapsed under the weight of human fury. The few survivors? They had fled screaming into the galactic void, carrying with them a message that spread to every predator species within 100 light-years. This galaxy was under new management, and the new management didn't negotiate with genocidal monsters. The remarkable thing, General Mia observed quietly to Isabella, her voice filled with something approaching awe, is that they never demanded anything in return. No tribute payments, no territorial concessions, no submission treaties or loyalty. Oaths, they simply ... helped. And when the job was finished, they asked for nothing except our friendship. Carter's enhanced hearing caught the conversation, and he turned with that same cold smile that had become legendary throughout the galaxy. The smile that made entire fleets of pirates suddenly decide they had urgent business in other sectors. General, with all due respect, we did demand something quite specific. General Mia's brow furrowed with curiosity. What exactly did you demand, Commander? Carter's expression grew serious as he gestured toward the viewing ports where mixed patrol fleets moved through space in perfect coordination. Sleek human destroyers flying wing to wing with elegant Valoran cruisers. Joint task forces comprised of dozens of species working together to keep the peace. We demanded that this never happen again. To anyone, ever, anywhere in this galaxy. The weight of those words settled over the chamber like a blanket of absolute certainty. We didn't cross half the galaxy to be your saviors, General. We came to ensure that nobody, no species, no civilization, no innocent child anywhere would ever again need saving from systematic extinction. His voice carried the quiet authority of someone who had backed up every promise with overwhelming action. We came to make genocide extinct. But here's where things get really interesting and inspiring. The holographic displays throughout the chamber flickered to life, showing the newest addition to galactic law, the Carter Doctrine. The legislation was elegantly simple and terrifyingly comprehensive. Any species anywhere in the galaxy that engaged in systematic extinction would face the combined military might of the Alliance. With humanity's battle-tested fleets leading the charge, the document had been ratified unanimously, in record time. Apparently, when you've just watched humans annihilate a 1,000-year-old empire in less than a week, voting against their proposed anti-genocide policies seems like a remarkably bad idea. As the formal council session began to wind down, young Valoran citizen approached Isabella, her bioluminescent patterns flickering with the kind of innocent curiosity that had nearly been extinct just months earlier. The sight of young Valorans asking questions instead of hiding in terror was perhaps the greatest victory of all. Ambassador Isabella? The young citizen asked, her voice carrying the fearless wonder that only the truly safe can possess. Why do you think the humans responded so extensively to our simple request for medical aid? Most species would have sent supply ships and kind words. The humans sent the largest military force in galactic history. Isabella considered the question carefully, her gaze drifting to the orbital defense stations visible through the chamber's crystal walls. Human and alien crews worked side by side, their combined technologies creating defensive systems that made the old Shadow Reaper fleets look like children's toys. I think, young one, that humans understand something fundamental that the rest of us had forgotten during our long centuries of so-called civilized behavior. She paused, her mind returning to that terrifying and magnificent moment when 412 human warships had emerged from hyperspace with weapons already charging, ready to fight a war they had no obligation to fight for people they had never met. Evil isn't defeated by good intentions, diplomatic protests, or proportional responses. Evil isn't stopped by committees, sanctions, or strongly worded letters. Isabella's voice grew stronger, carrying the conviction of someone who had witnessed the impossible become reality. Evil is defeated by superior firepower and the absolute will to use it without hesitation, without mercy, and without stopping until the job is completely finished. The young Valoran's eyes widened with understanding. So the humans came to teach the galaxy how to fight evil effectively. No, child, Isabella smiled. Watching a joint human-alien patrol cruiser glide past the viewing port like a guardian angel made of metal and starlight. The humans came to teach the galaxy that evil should be terrified of good people who refuse to stand by and watch genocide happen. Deep in the void between galaxies, the scattered remnants of the Shadow Reaper civilization whispered warnings to any predator species. Foolish enough to listen, the galaxy had protectors now, and these protectors didn't believe in half measures. Proportional responses, or giving evil a second chance. They believed in making absolutely certain that some problems never, ever returned. And throughout the galaxy, innocent beings slept peacefully for the first time in millennia, knowing that somewhere in the darkness, human ships were on patrol, carrying a simple message to anyone thinking about genocide. Not on our watch, not ever again, the end.